At the age of 11 or 12, I saw my first UFO.
It was 2005 before I saw my first one.
I've always been kind of attracted to that idea of there's something else.
This is what's happening. This is what's going on. And this is why they are doing it and what they want.
They're really not aliens, okay?
They're not coming here from distant star systems.
They don't necessarily want us to know that they are here.
Just a mountain, a hole opens up in a mountain and UFOs are shooting out of it.
That's when he saw this tall gray that was standing in his doorway.
As soon as we realized that this is what's going on, everything clicked into place and started making sense.
UFOs, eerie, elusive. What in the cosmos are they? Where did they zip in from, and what clandestine agendas do they harbor on our humble Earth? These questions might tickle the mind or send shivers down the spine, depending on who you ask. Yes, my friends, UFOs, or UAPs as they now want us to call them, are undeniably real.
We've seen every show on it and read so much about it. And I kept seeing these people looking up at the sky going, who are they? What do they want? You know, this poor person keeps getting abducted and they don't understand it. And we had a theory on it.
For centuries, perhaps millennia, the skies have set the stage for these mysterious visitors. According to the dedicated folks at the UFO Reporting Center, which has been keeping tabs on these celestial anomalies for nearly half a century, over 150,000 sightings have been cataloged in the United States alone. That's an average of over 3,000 per year, with a startling spike to over 6,000 in 2019. And let's whisper a chilling truth. These reported incidents are likely just a fraction of the actual encounters.
When I saw my first UFO, it was at nighttime, about maybe 9:30 at night. It was in like January or February. It must have been about 1970, 71. I just happened to be looking out the front door, and there was this large orange globe that was maybe 500 feet high in the air, and it was just moving from south to north at an even pace, kind of slow, and then it kind of paused, and then it continued on to the north. And I was just staring at it thinking, is that an airplane? But it doesn't have running lights, and it's moving too slow, and it's an orange globe.
So we should dismiss the thought that this is merely a fringe phenomena observed by the eccentrics among us. This is a persistent, worldwide enigma that has even the most skeptical scientists scratching their heads.
It was 2005 before I saw my first one. I was the one driving and looking through the windshield ahead, and it was a bright white light in the sky, about maybe twice the brightness and size of, say, Venus. And at first I thought, oh, it's a plane coming into Palm Springs Airport, but it didn't have the blinking running lights like planes have, and it wasn't behaving like a plane. It was sort of just hovering. It was moved slowly, and then it got over the highway in front of us and stopped. We were hurtling towards it at about 65 miles an hour, and it got brighter and brighter and brighter. And I'm not sure if it was moving towards us and us to it or what, but it got brighter and brighter until it was about half the brightness of the moon. And it took off so quickly that visually it streaked out into a line, and the line collapsed in on itself. I would have guessed it was traveling at 20,000 miles an hour. It was gone over the northern horizon in less than a quarter of a second. Just that fast. You know, a white light in the sky could be any number of things, right? But not when it moves at 20,000 miles an hour. And also, it didn't ramp up to 20,000 miles an hour. It instantly went at this speed. So the inertia would have been unbelievable. Any human-made craft or human being would have been squashed against the wall. All the equipment in the plane would have been squashed against the wall moving like that.
So, how fast are these things? There have been actual reports, allegedly reliable ones, that have clocked these mysterious crafts moving at speeds that, well, we're talking hold on to your hats somewhere in the ballpark of 15,000 miles per hour. Yes, you heard that right. And no, they're not earning frequent flyer miles.
That's ridiculous fast. That's, what was it in Spaceballs? Ludicrous speed. So obviously we're dealing with, that's the UFO phenomenon. It can't be anything else.
What are these craft? Who pilots them? Why do they visit us so frequently? Is there a covert alliance with the government? There are many theories out there, some fairly mundane. Some of them are really out there. Today, we're going to cover one of those theories. Brace yourself. These answers might just be as shocking as the unexpected phenomena itself.
My wife and I, Leslie, we actually sat down and talked with my brother Phillip about some of the things that had happened to him. When he turned 16, yes, he had 3 events in a row that happened to him. The first night, he was awakened by these 2 bright, like UFOs, these bright lights that were shining inside, just outside his bedroom window. And he looked at them, and then he blacked out for a few seconds, trying to figure out, is it flashlights? What? It wasn't flashlights. So the next night, he was awakened by what he called a scrabbling sound underneath his bed, and he just thought it was one of the cats. So he's going to go, put his hand down there and pet the cat, whatever. And instead, a hand grabbed his arm. He blacked out. And so the following night was, again, he was awakened in the middle of the night, and that's when he saw this tall gray that was standing in his doorway.
It's fascinating, really. UFO sightings aren't just the domain of sci-fi enthusiasts who wear tinfoil hats and attend yearly conventions. Although, let's be honest, they do add a bit of color to the mix. No, these reports come from folks of every kind. From the farmer in Nebraska who swears the lights above his cornfield weren't from the local teen's drone, to the pilot cruising at 30,000 feet who glimpses a fast mover that isn't on her radar. And let's not forget the teacher, baker, and yes, even the candlestick maker. It seems looking up into the night sky and spotting something otherworldly is one of the few hobbies that doesn't discriminate based on your day job. Everyone's a potential witness in the grand cosmic court, where the jury's still out, but the intrigue is unanimous.
What happened to me when I was 18, it appeared to me as a blue-white entity, but bright. I was literally afraid to sleep in that bedroom the next night, so I didn't. I wore my work clothes from the day before, and I slept on the living room couch. I awoke about 5:30 in the morning, and I was laying on my back, and I know I was awake. I looked at my piano, thinking about what I was going to play that day, heard the fountain in the other room. I was awake, but I'm not going to get up at 5:30. And then from behind me, it was like this entity knew that I was awake. And again, this tall, skinny entity came from the front door, like just came right through the front door, brought all this blue-white light in with it. The whole room was filled with blue-white light, and it was blue-white. Stopped by my right-hand side. Immediately, the whole right side of my body becomes paralyzed. And it bent down, and it whispered in my ear, not in my head, but in my ear, said, "Hi, Steve." And I'm thinking, I want to see your face. I want to see who you are. And I can't quite see its face. And so half of me was really excited. The other half of me was scared. Then I black out.
Now the real question, the one that keeps folks at NASA up at night, not to mention a few curious folks like us, is exactly what are these beings? Are they tourists from across the galaxy just popping by to snap some photos of the Earth for their extraterrestrial Instagram? Or are they perhaps long-lost relatives who figured it was time to drop in for a cosmic family reunion? And here's where it gets even stickier. There's a chance that they might not even be from space.
Theories at the time were that these beings are coming from all different star systems. The tall white ones are coming from the Pleiades, and the blue ones are from the Arcturus, and from all these different places around, right? The more I tried to apply that theory to our data, it kept not aligning. For one thing, these UFOs are being seen way too often. They're seen like 10,000 times a year, every year, for hundreds of years, and going back maybe even thousands of years. So just the number of sightings was straining credulity that these could be coming from a distant star systems. It would have to be so easy they could just literally open a door and walk through to our universe. That's how it would have to be that easy for them to come here so often. A lot of the UFO sightings that I was finding were talking about them coming up out of the planet somehow. They're coming up out of a lake, or they're coming up out of the ocean, or out of a volcano, or at the side of a ridge, or a mesa, or just a mountain. A hole opens up in a mountain and UFOs are shooting out of it. I kept hearing these kinds of things. And so they're not coming from up, down, they're coming from down, up.
So around about the time when I hit 30, I started doing my own research because of a very strange event that happened when I was married to my ex-wife. I still don't know what to make about it this day. My ex-wife was a school teacher, and she was getting ready to go to school. It's about 5:30. She would always get up early, So anyway, so she's in the bathroom getting dressed, and I'm trying to go back to sleep, and I hear this distinctive sound of a Harley Davidson being revved. And this is 5:30 in the morning in January, so it's dark. And we lived on the second story of a condo in a courtyard of a condominium park, right? Well, who the hell is revving a Harley Davidson at 5:30 in the morning? It was loud. And so I got up out of bed and I looked out the window and I said, there's nobody there. I thought that was really odd. And so I went back tried to go back to sleep, and then it happened again, even louder this time. So I rolled onto my back, and then all of a sudden, all these beings just appear in my room, weirdly dressed. Some were animals, and they were like attacking me, holding me down, and I could not stop it. Then I finally got out of that. I wasn't in a dream, and I thought, well, God, I must be losing my mind. Well, according to our research, that they really are part of the human experience that goes back to a splitting of our races about 13,000 years ago.
Zecharia Sitchin, born in 1920, became famous, or infamous depending on how you look at it, for his interpretations of ancient Sumerian texts. Now, according to him, these texts weren't just historical records. Oh no. He believed they told the story of extraterrestrial visitors known as the Anunnaki. According to Sitchin, well, they weren't just any visitors. They were the architects of human civilization. He argued that these beings came from a hidden planet in our solar system. Now, this planet supposedly has an elongated orbit, bringing it near Earth every 3,600 years or so. Sitchin's books, particularly starting with the 12th planet, explore the idea that the Anunnaki come to the Earth in search of resources, specifically gold, which they needed to stabilize their own planet's atmosphere. And here's the kicker. He suggested that the Anunnaki genetically engineered the first humans as laborers to mine this gold.
Sitchin has a lot of good evidence, and one of the things is that in the ancient Sumerian tablets, they talk about a pyramid that they built. They show a picture of it, and the proportions are precisely that of the Great Pyramid at Giza.
Now, his theories, they've stirred up quite a bit of debate. Scholars, many of them, dismiss his interpretations, but there's no denying that Sitchin's ideas have captivated a wide audience. People are drawn to the mystery of it all. Extraterrestrial, ancient myths, hidden planets. It's quite a story, one that Zecharia Sitchin wove into a narrative that challenges our understanding of human history.
Early on in my life, I read this book by a man named Fraser. He wrote it in the 1800s. He had tracked down 500 separate cultures worldwide that had a flood myth in their most ancient lore.
The Great Flood. This isn't just your run-of-the-mill puddle that forms because you forgot to clean the gutters. No, this is the flood, with a capital F, the one that supposedly washed away nearly everything on the Earth, leaving behind only those lucky enough to snag a spot on what might be considered the most overcrowded cruise in history.
And supposedly, a lot of these flood myths end the same way too. They all begin the same way almost. It's like God told us, you better build an ark, but then they almost all end the same way. Man had devolved into barbarism and cannibalism. And it looked like we were failing, like we were going to die out. Then God took pity on us and sent an emissary, or came himself. A godlike figure comes back to the people and gives them back civilization, teaches them how to grow crops again and how to do architecture and math, basically gives civilization back to the people, and then disappears. Then I began looking into it, the possibility that the flood really did happen. And about 3 decades ago, I think it was, nanodiamonds were discovered in the soil of 13,000 years ago. There was a minor extinction event in North America. The Clovis people were all wiped out, along with the mammoth and the mastodon, American horse and camel, and the saber-toothed cat and the dire wolf, and a bunch of other animals, all wiped out at the same time. Then the nanodiamonds were discovered in this 13,000-year-old soil. And once that happened, then we knew what we were dealing with. It was a celestial impact of some kind, because nanodiamonds only form during celestial impacts. The dust that a meteor or a comet brings with it through our atmosphere, that dust superheats and forms these little tiny round diamonds called nanodiamonds. Now we had the smoking gun. We knew it was a celestial impact of some kind. But then after the comet struck, the resulting tsunamis, we think, caused a lithospheric shift as well. But right after that, after the younger Dryas impact, we think it shifted the planet slightly. It put Siberia from a temperate zone up into an Arctic zone. So that's why there are all these mammoths and rhinoceri frozen to death. Flash frozen, by the way, which would have happened in the younger Dryas comet impact, because a wall of sleet would have gone out in a massive circle outward. When it hit these mammoths and these animals in Siberia, it hit them so fast that it froze them standing. They actually froze with food still in their mouths, like they're mid-chew. And fruit trees were frozen with fruit still on them. Anyone who's had a crop of fruit trees exposed to a winter frost knows that the trees will drop their fruit to survive. But for them to be flash frozen so fast that the fruit is still on the tree, that would have had to have been incredibly fast freezing. I think the human race back then, they had like the Deep Impact movie. There's a killer asteroid heading to Earth. President Morgan Freeman proposes 2 plans. Plan A is to blow up the asteroid with the hero, Hollywood heroes that fly off. But plan B was to dig these cities underground deep enough to where people would survive the impact. And I believe that is precisely what happened. These societies of humans were installed underground. They took their technology with them. Then the impact happened. The poor schmoes left on the surface. We were almost wiped out. And we were thrown back into the Stone Age. And so that makes the people living under the ground 13,000 years more advanced than we are, technologically speaking. We think that that's who is launching the UFOs in our skies. And as soon as we realized that this is what's going on, everything clicked into place and started making sense.
These entities, they're really related to they're basically really human beings. Human beings that have a 13,000-year advantage over us technologically. I mean, look how far we've come in 100 years, from the Model T to what we have now. From the beginning of airplanes, now we have the internet. It's like we've come so far. Just imagine the human race, with even a couple thousand years of not killing themselves, and what we will be able to do. I mean, it's shocking. It's necessity. A lot of it's necessity. And also, too, they don't want us to blow up the planet because they live here. We're messing with their ability to survive, but they need us. And they don't necessarily want us to know that they're here, because human beings, we freak out easily too, It's easy to buy into, like, the War of the Worlds, 1938. He was even said, this is all a fiction. This is all just a play, right? But some people thought, like Trinity Lake, they thought it was absolutely real. People killed themselves because they didn't know, because it's easy to make people fearful. It's easy to push the buttons of people.
So a lot of people ask, so Leslie, are aliens involved at all? Then we have to go back. So most of the time we've been talking about what happened 13,000 years ago when I think the race separated. That would be a really good reason for the race to separate, right? Is why would so many people go underground, you ask yourselves? Well, there's a really good reason right there, But if you go back a lot further to the time between Homo erectus and Homo sapien, this is an enormous missing link here. It appears that the human race was uplifted from Homo erectus into Homo sapien. And we think that because there's actually some genetic proof of this. It's in the speech centers of the Broca's brain that looks like there's been a cut and paste job on our genome, like we've been uplifted to be able to speak, like somebody gave us the power of speech. And there's an enormous difference between Homo erectus and Homo sapien cognitively as well. It has to do with being able to imagine. The Homo erectus was still like an animal. It would have drunk water out of a creek like this, right? But Homo sapien, we make cups and build chairs to sit in and houses to sit in and drink water from our cup. The creative mind this is an enormous jump. And it looks like we were uplifted, and we couldn't have uplifted ourselves, right? Prior to 13,000 years ago, because of the comet impact, we have almost no history of ourselves back, anything prior to that. Everything comes from archaeology prior to that, One of the few things we do have is the Sumerian tablets, because they were fired and buried. That was good. That was a good idea, right? Their history is there, and it's one of the few histories we have that does go back that far. Sitchin didn't make the stuff up, he was translating these tablets. Some people think badly, some people think great, but I really put a lot of stock in Sitchin's work. For instance, I like his theory on the Great Pyramid of Giza, that it was built 10,000 years ago. One of the things the Sumerians liked to do was mark their endeavors with the astrological components of precession. And the precession, they would have been entering the time of Leo 10,000 years ago. And that's why they put all these sphinxes all over the Giza Plateau, is because it was in the time of Leo. Now, is this the master and his people? Are they making this history up? Or is this really the Sumerian history as is real? Because if it is, then Nibiru is a planet that is supposed to be part of our solar system. So we're still not talking about interstellar travel per se, right? Nibiru is supposed to circle a brown dwarf out towards the direction of Orion. This is why so many ancient world sculptures have Orion somehow in it. The belt of Orion is key and important to them. And it takes a 3,600 year evolution for Nibiru to swing through our solar system. So once again, you don't need faster than light travel, because the planet itself is just swinging through the solar system every 3,600 years. And then you can use just good old-fashioned rocketry to get from one planet to another. And we think they did, because we have a lot of rockets in ancient Sumerian artwork, showing a giant rocket with flames coming out of the bottom of it. A lot of these artifacts that don't make any sense, it's because we were a thriving civilization that got destroyed and then had to re-emerge. But we have a few little pieces from the civilization prior that make no sense with our current, belief in evolution. But it also makes no sense in what mainstream archaeology is saying and mainstream science is saying. They're saying that we evolved into Homo sapiens sapien roughly 120,000 years ago. And then we sat around for 107,000 years doing nothing, advancing in no way. We didn't even invent the house. And then 13,000 years ago, we just get some gumption up and decide to grow a society and go to the moon. in like 13,000 years. What were we doing with 107,000 years of what? I think we rose as a civilization and were fairly technologically advanced, maybe to where we are now, say. I think we actually had a space program. I think that's why there are bases on Mars. So then we're looking up at the sky, an extinction level event is heading our way. What do we do? And I think we buried ourselves, and I think some of us escaped into space. And these people have been living under the ground, and now 1,000 years or so goes by, they're still underground. And see, people don't realize that the climate upheaval after the comet. The Uccello horizon is this layer of charcoal 13,000 years ago, showing all the forests of the northern hemisphere were on fire at the same time. That happens in comets because they break apart as they come in, and they get these air bursts that cause forest fires. First, it catches all of the northern hemisphere on fire at the same time, lays down this layer of charcoal, and then there's 1,100 years of climate upheaval on top of that. For 1,100 years afterwards, you wouldn't have been able to grow crops in the northern hemisphere. We had to return to hunter-gatherers just to survive. History became stories around campfires. I think in order to survive the cataclysm, they had to go underground and seal off all the air ducts and everything, and then survive the cataclysm, and then you can open up all the air ducts again. And so they're breathing fine. Another thing I think they did, and this makes a lot of sense to me, we have stories about this populations moving to underground mountains, underground into mountains. Like the Lemurians that was a continent in the Pacific Ocean that was kind of low ground and would certainly not survive the tsunami that was coming. They had to move the entire population quickly to a safe place. The inside of a volcano is perfect. A volcano has a throat. It's like an elevator shaft going down to the mantle, essentially through the entire crust. And off of this elevator shaft are huge lava tubes that open up into enormous chambers. So it's already a pre-existing bomb shelter in a way. You know, you can just move with relatively a small amount of effort. You can move an entire population into these things. It'd be above the tsunami line, so it's safe from the tsunamis. You don't want to go underground and low ground. After a tsunami, you could have a lake on top of you. But you go underground in a mountain, you're going to be high enough elevation. And so I think that's why a lot of these underground bases are in mountains or in volcanoes. Mount Mycenae in Italy, UFO hotspot, abduction stories. We think these people that live underground, they have no qualms about using genetic manipulation whenever they want to. We think that let's say they need a bunch of underwater work done, they would maybe just breed the reptiloid race. In order to instead of making scuba gear, you make reptiloids that can work underwater, say, you know. And so I think that they also created Bigfoot. So we think that they created them and used them, I believe they used them as sentries to guard the entrances to their underground bases. I know that sounds even wackier than everything else, but one of the things that made me think this was Lake Rupkund in India. Lake Rupkund is like 14,000 feet, and it's on the slopes of Mount Kailash. So it's right there. It's full of skeletons. It's a lake above the tree line, and they found there's like 1,000 skeletons inside this lake. And so they thought, well, was there a battle here? And maybe everybody just got thrown in, you know, the losers got thrown in the lake. Now they're DNA testing these skeletons, and this is not what happens. These skeletons span like 1,000 years. And they're from all different races. So, and a lot of them have their heads bashed in. Like it looks like a giant behemoth took a club and bashed their heads in. So I think that's literally what's happening. The Yeti are sentries on Mount Kailash, and when a scouting party does get too close, they bash their heads in and throw their bodies in the lake. One of the things I really like about our theories is it doesn't require any theoretical physics for them to be true. For instance, if they're coming from other solar systems, then somehow faster than light travel has to be true. Wormholes have to be true, or some way of traveling has to be true. Not our theory. They're here already. They've always been here. Are they interdimensional? We don't see any signs that interdimensional travel is real, except that it seems like they open up portals and go in and out through them. And maybe this is interdimensional travel. But our theories don't require interdimensional travel to be true for our theories to exist. Also, the same thing with time travel. It doesn't require these time travel to be real for our theories to exist. Our theories are just fine with normal physics. For instance, in biblical times, these beings were flying in fiery chariots. Ezekiel describes this fiery chariot coming down. The other prophets that went up in the sky, they just see this fiery chariot. It sounds to me like good old-fashioned rocketry. They're using rockets and rocketry to fly around, right? Now we know that they've evolved too. They're not just sitting there stagnant. They've been evolving as well. And now we know they use some sort of a nuclear power to power their ships, because when people get too close to these ships, sometimes now they're getting electromagnetic radiation burns. So it has something to do with the propulsion, I believe, of their ships. When I think about their technology, I try not to overthink it, because I feel like a gorilla poking at a cell phone, it's just beyond me, most of it. But it doesn't seem like a million years ahead of us, right? It seems about like 13,000 years might be about right. Now they've evolved past it, and so are we. We're just starting to get beyond looking at other means of propulsion as well.
Okay, so let's get into Admiral Richard E. Byrd. He was quite the explorer, a real adventurer. In his time, he flew over the North Pole and the South Pole, which back then wasn't just a hop on a plane, it was a major expedition. Now, where it gets interesting and a little bit out of the ordinary is when you bring in his connections to ufology. Byrd supposedly kept a diary, and here's where it gets a little bit, curious. In his diary entries, particularly those about his Arctic expedition, he talks about entering a strange new land beyond the North Pole, where he encountered advanced technology and perhaps even extraterrestrial beings. This part of his story has become a cornerstone for many theories involving UFOs and aliens.
Most people know about Admiral Byrd's lost diary. I should not say lost, but posthumously discovered. His son was going through his personal effects after he died, and he found this diary. And in this diary, he describes a meeting with these human beings. He describes them as men living under the ice sheet. He's flying his plane into an underground ice world where he spots a woolly mammoth as he's flying by, and then his plane is taken over. They tell him on the radio, we're going to take over your plane and land it. Then he's flanked by flying saucers. They land his plane for him. He meets with a person called the Master, who talks to him like he's talking to a child, like my son. Oh, my son this, my son that. This Master tells him that you are in the world, the underworld, the world of the Ariani, and normally we have nothing to do with you people and your barbaric wars up on the surface. But we had to make an exception now because you've learned to crack the atom. And this is a power that you should not be playing with. You don't have the knowledge to control this or handle it, right? So now we've had to break our silence and warn the people of your world. Take back this message to the people of your world.
People in the ufology community, they really latch onto this because it suggests that there could be hidden advanced civilizations or alien contacts that have been kept secret. It adds a whole nother layer of mystery to Byrd's already impressive legacy. It changes the whole perspective.
Then in 47, Admiral Byrd, in the 30s, late 30s, Hitler was showing this bizarre interest in Antarctica. Nobody could figure out why. But he's got U-boats just combing the coast, and the U-boats say they discover something, like a paradise under the ice. One of the U-boat commanders was quoted. Then after that, he sends enormous resources to the continent, engineers and ships and mining equipment, and all this equipment is going down there. So there's bizarre. So U.S. intelligence at the time surmises that there was a Nazi base under the ice sheet of Antarctica. And in 1947, after the war, Admiral Byrd was tasked, we believe, with the destruction of this base. So he sends an armada down to Antarctica. It's the Operation High Jump. And in Operation High Jump, we discovered this in a Russian documentary that hit the air in 1986. But it's on YouTube. Anybody can see it on YouTube. Describes this incident. When Admiral Byrd gets to Queen Maud Land with his armada, a squadron of flying saucers fly up out of the ocean, attack the armada with a ray that they shoot at it. They sank a destroyer and they downed half of Byrd's carrier-based aircraft, killed dozens of men. Then they go back into the ocean and gone. And Operation High Jump was supposed to be a 6-month operation. They turned tail and ran back to South America after just 2 months. We know that. And Byrd was quoted in an Argentine magazine as saying, "America can now be attacked by an enemy capable of flying from pole to pole in a matter of seconds." Then he went back to Washington and was muzzled for the rest of his life. He did not say another word about any of this the rest of his life. But then this diary is published. And I think what happened is that after the attack, he being the hero he was, this guy was a Medal of Honor winner, he was an explorer, he was just an American hero at the time, of unimpeachable character. We think he personally took a crew, got in one of his planes, and flew into the Ariane world.
But, and this is a big but, it's important to remember that these diary entries are widely debated. Many folks question their authenticity, while others treat them as gospel. So, in the grand scheme of things, Byrd's supposed encounters have fueled a lot of speculation and excitement in the world of ufology, giving both believers and skeptics plenty to talk about.
We've since heard of an enormous hole in the Antarctic ice sheet, huge, that you could fly a plane into and go down. And this is in the no-fly zone that America has blocked off, that nobody's supposed to fly over, right? But in a medical emergency, this one pilot decided to fly over it. Sure enough, they spot this enormous hole that the U.S. is hiding from the rest of the world. So we believe he flew down into the ice sheet, met with the master. The master told him essentially what they wanted to do. They want us to give up our nukes, be less technological, take better care of the planet. And then he told us why he's going to abduct us. It's very interesting. The master told Admiral Byrd, he says, don't worry about the future of your race. We are going to take individuals and assure the perpetuation of your race, the safety of your race. So they're claiming that they're maybe taking individuals and keeping them. And we're finding that this is true, as far as there's a lot of just missing people. And the missing people, the numbers go up when you happen to be in a high UFO zone area, like Alaska. The numbers of people, there's like 16,000 missing people in Alaska. Sure, some were eaten by a grizzly bear, and some are dead in a crevasse, but most of them are just, poof, gone. And as soon as we applied this story, Admiral Byrd's story, to our UFO data, it all started making sense. Oh, we're not dealing with aliens. We're dealing with humans. And the Greys are humans that have been underground for 13,000 years and look like that because of that. But then the Nordic aliens, they look just like us because they came back up under the surface at some point. But they were our masters playing God For thousands of years, they've been playing God and kind of steering our race. But now they can't get away with that anymore. Or maybe with some people, but most of the time they can't get away with the God thing anymore. So now they're playing space alien. Anything to keep us looking up and not down where they really are. I keep hearing the same thing. A hole opened up on the mesa and UFOs shot in and out of the hole and then it closed up. This is not a spiritual event. This is a duck blind.
A duck blind has nothing to do with ducks needing glasses. No, a duck blind is actually a sort of hideout for hunters. The whole idea is to be sneaky, because you can imagine ducks aren't that keen on sticking around if they know there's a hunter nearby.
On that mesa, somebody pointed a heat detecting camera at it. And sure enough, right under this, where the hole was, there's this heat signature on the mesa. Because there's a facility underneath the mesa. Everywhere else on the mesa, you point this heat thing, cold, 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 cold. But right where the hole was, it's hot. This is a physical, measurable phenomenon and they're physically here sharing our planet with us. We think that our government became aware of these things in the 40s. In 1941, in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, there was a crashed alien ship and with dead alien bodies. The government managed to quash that one quickly. They grabbed all the evidence and took it off to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and they disappeared the evidence. But we know that they became aware of these things, if not before that, at least by then.
Back in 1947, and this is the kind of famous part, a UFO supposedly crashed in Roswell, New Mexico. You've probably heard about it. But here's where it gets interesting. The wreckage, and some say even the extraterrestrial occupants inside of it, were moved later to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Why there? Well, it's home to the Foreign Technology Division, which sounds like they're supposed to be dealing with, foreign cars or something. But actually, they handle much more mysterious stuff. Now, this base became the center of a lot of speculation, and let's just say imaginative stories. People thought it wasn't just about studying foreign technology from other countries, but rather from other galaxies. That's right, galaxies, far, far away. And Wright-Patterson was the grand central station for UFO research. There were rumors about secret hangars and underground tunnels where alien technology was stored and studied. So over the years, this base has become legendary in UFO circles.
It all sounds kind of nuts, and I realized that, especially when I was researching the alien breeding program. I thought, oh my God, I have to report this in a book. This is so crazy. But then I thought, but is it crazier than that they're coming from 38 light years away, 10,000 times a year, every year, And I realized that it actually makes a lot more sense. That's why they've been with us for thousands of years. They live here. So the Admiral Byrd thing was the real epiphany for me, was realizing that we're dealing with a breakaway population of humanity, and I think some of them have been underground for too long, like the Greys. What would happen to a human being if you put us underground for 13,000 years? Our eyes would get blacker and larger. Our skin would get paler and grayer. We wouldn't need hair anymore to protect us from the sun. And we have more in common with the Greys than we do with our closest other relative on the planet, the chimps. The Greys walk perfectly upright. The only other creature to do this besides us is the Greys, the Nordic aliens, the Bigfoot, These are the only upright walking beings. So we think that they're evolved from humans. They have mutated from us to a certain extent. That was proven with this one little kernel of evidence I really love is the hair of the alien. This man in Australia, he woke up to a hybrid alien woman straddling him in bed. And another woman, he said she looked more Asian, was sitting on the foot of the bed. But this hybrid alien woman who's having sex with him while he's paralyzed, her eyes were too large, he said. Her cheekbones and chin were pointy, kind of too pointy. And she had white hair, long white hair. And so these two women have their way with him, and then he blacks out, and he wakes up the next morning, and there's a hair in bed with him, a white hair in bed. But you look closer at this hair, it's clear, like fishing line. So he gets this thing analyzed, he gets it tested, and sure enough, it is a clear hair. And there is no human type of hair that's clear. Even albinos don't have clear hair, so it's an unknown type of hair, previously unseen, unknown, and then it tests out genetically as human. It's Basque, Gaelic, and a branch of Chinese that only 1% of the Chinese population. It tests out really bizarre DNA, but human DNA, mutated human DNA, because it's clear. So this is a proof, finally one little hard kernel of evidence that not only are these creatures human, they're mutants, all in the same hair. We get the same information from the same hair.
There's a lot of conjecture around what knowledge the government has about all this alien stuff, which brings us to President Eisenhower's supposed meeting with aliens. Well, let's set the scene. It's 1954. Dwight D. Eisenhower is president, and according to this story, which is really something, instead of spending a peaceful weekend golfing, he's off secretly meeting with extraterrestrials. Eisenhower went to Edwards Air Force Base, which at the time was called Muir Airfield. The official story was that he was there for a dental emergency. But according to UFO lore, what he was actually doing there was having a meeting with some very tall, very blonde visitors from another world. These visitors were known as the Nordics because they looked like, Scandinavians. These Nordics weren't your average guests. They were described as peaceful beings, highly advanced, and they supposedly offered to share their advanced technology with us. But there was a catch. They wanted the US to dismantle all its nuclear weapons. As the story goes, Eisenhower declined because, giving up the entire nuclear arsenal during the height of the Cold War seemed like a bad move strategically. So this meeting is one of those stories that's floated around in UFO circles for years. There's no real concrete evidence, just a lot of whispered rumors and a few looks.
We think that this meeting between Eisenhower and the Nordics, we think they set a disclosure date that has since come and gone. Stephen and I believe at this point that it's actually us that want to keep this quiet and is trying to keep a lid on it. And we think our cousins are actually trying to come out to the world. That's why they're showing themselves so often. I think that's what crop circles are all about, is they're trying to go around our military and communicate directly with our science community. The whole thing with the Phoenix Lights. If you're not trying to show yourself, what are you doing? That incident, the UFO started in Nevada and crossed all of Arizona, making sure to go over the Capitol so that most people can see it, and then cruise all the way across the rest of the state and into Mexico. I thought, what are they, joyriding? Did they steal Papa's ship or something, But I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to disclose to us that they're there. And it's our government now trying to keep a lid on it still. We all keep thinking, disclosure's coming. Since Project Blue Book inception, the government has been stonewalling us. This isn't happening. It's not happening. It's swamp gas. It's mass hysteria. And then in 2017, Luis Elizondo released his story to the New York Times with the 3 videos, the famous ones, Tic Tac, Go Fast, and Gimbal.
Over the past few years, there's been some real movement in regards to the government disclosing info on UFOs. It all started to unfold publicly back in December of 2017, when the New York Times ran a rather eye-opening article. This piece revealed that there was a previously covert U.S. government program dubbed the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP, which had been operational from about 2007 till around 2012. This program was no garden variety project. Fast forward to April 2020, and the Pentagon made a move that was startling. They officially released 3 Navy videos that had been leaking around since 2017. And these weren't your typical home videos. These captured UAPs performing maneuvers that defy our understanding of physics and aerospace technology. The videos, which were originally captured between 2004 and 2015, showed objects moving at incredible speeds and making turns that would leave even the best pilots dumbfounded. Following this release, the topic of UAPs started to be taken much more seriously by officials and the public alike. It had become a subject worthy of official reports and congressional briefings. All of this culminated in a report delivered to Congress in June 2021, which admitted that there were aerial objects that the US government cannot identify. They couldn't say for sure that they were extraterrestrials, but they also couldn't say they weren't, leaving everyone hanging a bit. And that's how the government began to pull back the curtain on the mysterious world of UAPs, marking a significant shift from the usual secrecy to a more open acknowledgement of the unknown. It's quite the development, although some will say it was a misdirect.
We know all this information from our research almost, but to hear it read onto the floor of the House, into the congressional record, it was really something for us ufology people. Were like, wow. Yes, they have ships. Yes, they have dead biologics. Yes, they are real. And the 2 pilots, one of them was Ryan Graves. He was with the Red Rippers out of Oceania on the East Coast. They're the ones that were seeing these orbs more. He says they're 15 feet in diameter, clear glass, with a black square or cube like spinning inside of it. I think these are like spy drones that they use. And what Graves told me that was news to me was that they are seeing these things every single time our Navy goes out on maneuvers. Every time. That means they're monitoring our nukes every time, everywhere we go, all around the world. And Russia, too. They're keeping tabs on all the nuclear weapons in the world at all times. And they've proven they can deactivate them whenever they want to, too. The Malmstrom incident, a UFO parked itself outside Malmstrom. One by one, the nuclear warheads were taken offline, all separate systems, too, just like off. And it's just their way of telling us that we can shut them off whenever we want to. But you can tell they're afraid of our nukes. And why? If they're coming here from distant star systems, why would they care? Who cares if we blow ourselves up? But if they live here with us, I think that's further proof that they're not coming here from distant star systems.
In the shadowy depths of government secrecy and the endless skies above, we have journeyed through the strange world of UFOs and unearthed tales. From Admiral Byrd's Arctic adventures to the concrete halls of Wright-Patterson and the legendary meeting between President Eisenhower and extraterrestrial beings, we've explored corners of history not found in textbooks. What truths lie behind the government's recent acknowledgments of unidentified aerial phenomena? As the curtain slowly lifts, revealing hints of advanced technologies and potential interstellar communications, we're left to ponder, are we alone in the universe? Or have aliens been here all along, living right beneath our feet? The answer, woven into the fabric of these unsolved mysteries, is waiting silently to be unraveled.
In our theory, they're really not aliens, okay? I think they're opportunists.
We don't call them aliens in this house. We call them cousins. Or we coined a word, intraterrestrials, instead of extraterrestrials. That's our word. We should copyright it.